According to Joe Singleton's new book, the fact of our existence lies solely within our minds. What we choose to consume in this world translates directly to what we think within it. If we continually allow our minds to be bombarded with the ways of an imperfect and unfulfilling world, then we ourselves will remain ever imperfect and unfulfilled. To learn proper forms of meditation in our lives gives us the ability to change the trajectory of our minds towards perfection and fulfillment, away from unfulfillment and imperfection. This is the great vehicle, or our Dharma bubble, wherein our peace, freedom, and happiness can always be found. It is the ultimate seed within that waits to fulfill us all by the way of the Dharma, which is realized through the words of the Buddha. Find them here, find them now. Find your peace within you, too, here and now. Can be free to find your own nirvana. Your awakening starts now. Joe Singleton is an author, editor, publisher, tarot card spinner, rock hound, lapidary artist, and co-owner with Noel Edwards of the local stone crystal, tarot, and chakra jewelry boutique in Galveston, Texas. Ever seeking to fulfill the challenge and quest of Apollo to know thyself, his literary journey has taken him from the core of existential philosophy all the way to the realms of the spiritual Buddhaverse. In this podcast, we're going to listen to Joe and I discuss his interests in existential philosophy, Buddhism, and living a mindful life full of happiness and satisfaction in a difficult world. All right, let's get to the interview. Welcome to the show, Joe Singleton. So happy to have you on today.
Hey, Paul, it's great to be here.
Absolutely. And we are going to be discussing your new book, Mara Dawn, Buddha Rise, The Awakening. And this book, I believe, just came out recently. Is that true?
Absolutely. We published right around the first of the year and just having a lot of fun with it, promoting the book and talking with people like you all over the country. In fact, we've done podcasts in Canada, the UK, Nigeria. So it's really cool, to get the word out and connect with so many like-minded people. So it's a beautiful thing, this technology we've got. Absolutely.
Yes. And just for the listeners who might be interested in this, it talks about, I'll kind of read a little introduction before you get on the podcast so people have heard your bio, but we are talking about Buddhism and world philosophy and kind of modern philosophy, how it all fits together. Am I hitting that correctly?
It is. I call it a metaphysical elixir of really three things. First, classical Eastern spirituality, Buddhism in particular of the Tibetan order. I have an extensive background in existential philosophy, philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre, the kind of glory days of existential philosophy, and psychology as well. I cite some very cool psychology things in the book, and these three things kind of all work together in what I call a spiritual self-help cocktail for us to, kind of find that peace, freedom, and happiness that our hearts all seek, out of anxieties, fears, and doubts that seem to just cover us up on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, it's a very cool mix of kind of three different things that I've found come together really well through the text and the actual words of the Buddha, through the Dhammapada. So it's cool stuff and fun to look at and can be life-changing.
Yeah, I'd never actually seen a book that was quoting Sartre and Buddha in the same book in terms of like referencing similar things. Like I'd seen them, in those quote books. It's like, those calendars, like here's a nice quote by Buddha, here's a nice quote by Sartre, whatever. No, this is all kind of together in your book. So that was news to me. And I guess what I would say is I think I want to know a little bit more about your background before we delve into some of my questions about the book and things to explain to the audience. But how did you get into, philosophy and Buddhism and things like that?
In my very early days, I was a musician back in the 80s, so I'm also a tarot card reader. So I've always kind of delved into the spiritual aspects of things, the occult, anything you can kind of think of in that realm of kind of mystical stuff. I've always been curious about that. As I got older, I got into corporate sales for 20 years and kind of got into that family life and all that kind of stuff. And as I aged into middle age, my mind started going back to that. And I actually, at around 40 years of age, I went back to college. I had never finished college and changed my major to philosophy. And I've always been a seeker, trying to find, the answers to life. In that bio on the back of my book, the god Apollo went to the Oracle of Delphi back in Greek mythology and found that the answer to life in 2 words: know thyself. And I really went, did a lot of delving into. I had honors at the University of Houston downtown. 1 semester in philosophy, and a lot of really good stuff is there, the nuts and bolts of our existence. I've written about it before, but there's something missing from even that. And it's funny you said that about the quotes. I was an editor on a book that put 21 of the greatest philosophers of all time into one book, and it had a tarot card deck associated with it, the Philosopher's Tarot, for a professor of mine at UHD. And I had the very great privilege to be an associate editor on that book. And one of the philosophers she used was Buddha. One of my jobs was to track down references, and one of her references was from a book called What the Buddha Taught by Rahul Apola. And this is basically a common sense kind of Western version of how to explain the Dhammapada, which are actually the words of the Buddha, what the Buddha actually taught. It's a lot about Dharma, self-realization, all of these kinds of things. Something about that book, I bought it and read it in one day, and it just clicked in my mind. There's a mandala called the karmic wheel of life, from Tibetan Buddhism realms. They used to put this mandala on the outside of Buddhist monks for all of the common and lay people who, weren't aware of Dharma and the expansion of mind and awakenings. And it's a one vision you look at, and it kind of gives you a vision of the world as this kind of big maze that we all fight through over many lifetimes through reincarnation and what Dharma is and what it's all about. And that really sparked a lot of things in me. And when I read and understood the words of what the actual Buddha taught, Buddhism has taken many different realms, and like many religions, has changed a lot over the centuries and eons, where the message is almost completely different than what it originally was. So that really gave to me, when I discovered Dharma, what that's about, self-realization. I grew up in a kind of a Christian mindset, as millions and millions of us did here in the USA, and it really might open my mind up to some new things. Almost a science of spirituality. You'll hear the Dalai Lama often say, most religions rely on faith, right? Blind faith, but Buddhism relies on reason and logic, right? We have to use our minds, our aspects of our spiritual intelligence to kind of lift ourselves up. So it's very mind-opening and enlightening stuff. I even have a very bolded line in the book that says, read the Dhammapada. That's kind of where it all started, and everything came together for me like a glue. And I feel like I found that answer I'd always been listening to in that. And I'm working on the second book now, and it just expands and expands more and more. We're talking about meditation yoga. That's how we do it. That's how we organize our thoughts and feelings into more positive ones than the negative ones that the world kind of puts on us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I feel like what I'm hearing a lot before I delve into the book, kind of just from your philosophy, is that you align with Buddhism because of the way it allows you to interact with the world, and then also how you have to learn to interact with yourself to transcend and overcome a lot of these difficulties we have as humans, versus in the Christian religion, it's more about if you have faith or believe something, then it gets you something. It's like an exchange, right? Or like brings you somewhere, versus a practice, less of a practice.
That's exactly right. And I'm expanding a little bit on this in the next book, which is, when you kind of some of the differences between blind faith religions and Dharma, Buddhism in general, is you add two things that you don't find in any, 80% of us are either Christians, Muslims, Islam, Hindu, or Buddhism, right? There's a lot more kind of Western Christian Islamic thought in there, and that's a lot of it is really based on just blind faith, right? Do what God says. This is what we do, and if you do it right in this one lifetime, you're going to get judged at the end of your life and either go up or down, right? There's two things in Eastern spirituality from the Hindus and the Buddhists that you won't find in other religions worldwide. One of them is the concept of dharma, which is more of a beyond faith, right? Using our own logic, and also reincarnation, right, Paul? We have many lifetimes to get this and work it out, right? As opposed to a one shot. I have a line I love to use. It's part of the new book is, things move in circles, not straight lines. Only in theory is there a straight line from one point to the other. And that's where everything begins and stops. Rather, the universe, the planets, everything we know moves in circles and kind of these cosmic circles over time. So when you think about the concept of reincarnation, more and more people, I don't know about you, but that I talk to today, or this reincarnation is something that makes more sense, right, than a kind of one-shot lifetime to do this. It kind of slows time down a lot for us, right? It takes away the immediacy, what I call the time clock in the back of our mind of every decision that we have to make, right? I've got this much time to do this, and that's it. When you think of hundreds, thousands, millions of lifetimes, some of the bodhisattvas, pledge their allegiance to until everybody can get to nirvana. When you start thinking along those terms, it kind of opens up the universe and the world for us a lot. We don't have to focus on so much of, these next 10 years or this, but what can I do right now to change my attitude, my perspective, my vision of the world, the universe, and all things? Embracing the now. That's what really Dharma is all about, right? They tell us things become, they arrive, and they leave us. In short, what I say in this first book is we love the becoming part, we love the arriving part, but we fear and anxiety a lot with letting things go, knowing that things are going to leave us. We're born, we're starting a process of dying, right? We buy a brand new car, it's starting this process of rusting over time. I'm a kid and I eat a piece of gum. It tastes good for 5 minutes and then it's junk. I throw it out, right? It's that grief of letting go. We want everything to be permanent in a world that is impermanent. In short, that's Dharma, right? And just embracing that and understanding that everybody, everything, every concept that comes into my life, it's going to come to me, it's going to arrive, and it's going to leave me, right? So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of Dharma, and it just flowers into so many things the more that you meditate on it and understand that about all things in our life. Also, the subject of chakras, right? Psycho-energetic center points of our bodies. You won't find this in other religions, only the Hindu and the Buddhist, right? That's why I like to say that there's a little bit of spirituality here. There's a little bit of logic and philosophy, and there's also a little bit of science, right? When we think of psycho-energetic science, if we're able to embrace that as an actual type of science, our chakras from root to crown, it makes sense in Ascension. So it's a lot of cool things that come together in this book and beyond what we're working on for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I actually think there's almost a fourth thing you brought in here, which is dealing with the modern world. You talk about in the first chapter about samsara, which is kind of like the realm we find ourselves in. Am I right about that?
Exactly. That's what that mandala is all about. Yes.
So, and you say solutions for needless violence in samsara have never been found. You're talking about all the things we hear on the news all the time. And you said inequality between human beings here is constantly fostered and intensified to unsustainable levels. New and diverse sects of population unpeel themselves out of societal and cultural shadows like onions. Chaotic states of conflicts arise in the form of flash mobs. Yesterday's liberating heroes suddenly become today's oppressive villains. One band of hypocrites finds fresh reasons to attack the old ones once glorified. Unification through separation permeates the entire field of our collective consciousness. It feeds upon itself, subsequently consumes itself, and eventually regurgitates itself into new forms of bigotry and hatred. And you're kind of talking about the cycles of human existence, and also you're sort of poetically, I suppose, discussing the modern conundrum where we are now aware of all the injustices and inequalities to a much more acute degree than we've ever been aware because of technology and the ability to transmit information. Even if that information is not accurate, it is being transmitted. The emotions are being transmitted. And we are overwhelmed by seeing where are the solutions? Why can't the world get along? Why is everyone getting more greedy and there's so much, horrible suffering? Or has it always been this way? We just never noticed it because we didn't have the technology and the means to deconstruct these things. You know what I mean? Personally, I think it's always been this way, just in different iterations. But anyway, what are your thoughts?
You just sent chills up my spine, Paul. This is the fact that you just read those lines. I struggled for you don't know how long to try to get that right, and you said it exactly. Over age and time, I'm 57 years old now. Okay, and I can remember back to we look at the news and we look what's going on, and election cycles, right? This is the most important. Everything is at stake here. Nothing has ever been worse. It's the end of the world. Well, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, man. I remember when there were hostages overseas. We were waiting 3 hours in line for gas lines. I was born. We were just coming out of the Vietnam War. You think these days are dark? Go back to the 60s or 70s, and this is why I love. It's hard for me to read anything past the 1800s. I'm kind of a modern philosophy nerd, which modern philosophy ends at about the 1800s, right? Everything is more contemporary after that. But one of my favorite authors is Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, right? And I mentioned him at the beginning of book as one of my sources of inspiration. And it always, as I was going through my education in English literature and philosophy, is I'm thinking to myself, I'm reading stuff from the 1800s, the 1700s, the 1600s, Paul, and they are thinking the exact same thoughts that I'm thinking right now, and it's 300 years later, right? Nothing has changed. In that second part you brought, I talked a little bit about technology there. Technology, we like to think that this technology, makes our lives easier. All it really does is speed everything up, When I was a kid, there used to be 3 channels on TV, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And you got the news at 5 o'clock and you got the news at 10 o'clock. Then you have the rest of the time to kind of live your life and do your thing, right? Now we have all of these media outlets coming at us, 6, 7, 8, 10 major media outlets, 24 hours a day. And we just get sucked in and consumed to this. I have a line in the book that said, all technology is doing is just helping us lash out at each other faster than we could before. And it makes you wonder, how much farther can we go before just everything is nuts? There's a kid down the street from our shop that plays this music now, and it's just this fastest drum beats, and it's just noise, man. And I'm like, is this music or what is this? Everything is speeding up, man. And it's always going to be that way. And to encapsulate that all, samsara, the whole idea of it. And this is, a lot of people have a hard time with the beginning of my book. And I always say, get through the first 30 or 40 pages and then let it expand from there. There's a lot of talk in Dharma and Buddhism about our ignorance. I hate to say ignorance. I try to transform it to unenlightenment, right? Kind of like Plato's prisoner of the cave, right? When he got out, he found out it wasn't these shadows on the wall that were real. It was the sun coming through some crystals in the river making these shadows. He was enlightened. He found more truth, right? Most of us go through life on a day-to-day basis, watching these very metaphoric shadows on the wall. And it's just it's an amazing concept, the samsara. We all want to think, you think back to John Lennon, we all want peace in the world, right? They did their damnedest. They had the biggest movement you could have. The concept of samsara, Eastern spirituality, what the Buddha taught, this place is never going to get better. It's always been broken. It always will be broken. This existence in our society, our physical understanding of what the world is like the first step on a ladder of ascension. And we have to understand that before we know that. TV, movies, right? Whatever we listen to, whatever we watch, our minds are a very more powerful thing than we think. Manifestation is a big word these days. Our minds manifest. It's almost like a dream. This is what the Buddha taught. We're living a dream within a dream. What we filter in our minds is what we put out of our minds, right? So if we anger, for one thing, I was an angry person for a long time, Paul. I was wrapped up in politics and sports. That was my two things, man. And I was always dealing with that. As I kind of opened my mind and started, that philosophy stuff, I started seeing the macro of things. And I'm like, well, if I'm angry all the time, why do I keep watching this that makes me angry or participating in this that makes me angry? The beautiful thing about philosophy, the beautiful thing about Dharma is it pulls us out of ourselves and helps us look at the world as a whole rather than from our perspective. I'm a professional tarot reader. Every day I do a reading and I say we have this tunnel vision, right? From our soul through our eyes to the action happening upon us. That's life. That's what we experience. When we lay tarot cards around and we all have our attentions, we're rise above that and we're looking down upon our life. The tarot is often called the great procrastinator revealer. And we always see this is what's blocking me from being who I want to become because I'm locked down to this. We're almost trapped from the beginning. We're taught by our parents, our teachers, our clergy, everybody. This is how you live. You keep your nose down. You work hard. You deal with stress. You do this. You get married. You have a family. We get all these things and they're like, what is this, right? The talking heads. My God, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my God, what have I done, right? That expression we all share inside is the human condition. And the understanding of that, the ability to first understand that and say, hey, maybe this life I've been living isn't my spiritual purpose. The only way we can do that is through our meditations, right? We cycle up through our chakras to the root, which is our grounding of all things, the sacrum, which is our creative aspect. The belly is our will. The heart is our courage and our compassion. Our throat, the biggest one to me, our voice to the world. If we could listen to a recording of ourselves every day of what we said, we would probably be horrified in a lot of circumstances, right? Then we have our third eye, our intelligence, and the crown, our spirit. When you think about that, those are 7 key aspects of our life. What we do in meditation is we cycle up through each one of those chakras and we look at our lives. What did I do yesterday? What did I do today? What do I have the opportunity to do tomorrow? To find our authentic selves and use our logic and our reason to say, hey, I said this yesterday. It hurts me today that I said this. I don't want to say it again tomorrow. So I'm going to let that flow out, right? And I'm going to keep these good things I've said. And it's just a slow filtering out of all of the bad stuff in our minds. It takes a while. It's like a filter, right? That's what the next book is all about. Kind of that, what I call that door behind the Buddha's back, where we go from arrival to becoming to departure. It all starts back around. What do we want to set out into space all the way as far as we can? And what are we going to allow to keep circulating within our realm? This is called our Dharma vehicle. In Buddhism, it's called the Great Vehicle. We assume this vehicle, right? It's logic, understanding, it's physical, it's psychoenergetic. It's a very cool thing, man. And it can be very eye-opening and helping to people. I did meds, I did psych meds, I did therapists, I did marriage. I did all of that, and it works for a little bit, and then it all breaks down, right? In the end, as Apollo found, we have to know this. We have to understand ourselves. We go through the maze to the Minotaur, and we find the center, we find the monster, and it's ourselves. We're looking in the mirror, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I'm getting a lot out of the interview that you write this in detail in the book, which I think the book is very readable. But you're right. The first 40 pages are a bit depressing because you're laying out the troubles that we're all in, but you're trying to universalize the trouble. And I think when, there's that old quote, I don't know if this is in the book, but I thought myself clever, and so I tried to change the world. But now today I woke up and I found myself wise. So so I'm working on changing myself. I think Rumi said that. It's a very brutalized quote. You heard that quote?
I haven't heard that quote, but it's the exact same message, right?
Yeah.
I did a few years of sobriety. Okay, I went through that for a while when everything kind of broke down in midlife. And what we say in there, I can't change the 99% of the things in the world I can't change. The one thing I can change is myself, right?
Right.
We worry about 99% of things that never ever happen, right? This is why it's so important to let the what I call the haunts of the past and the fear of the future. We got to let all that go, right? What is in front of us today? What can I do today, right, to assume my place in the world and make my position in it better and help the world be a better place, right? It's courage of the heart and it's compassion. It's courage to overcome that. I struggled mightily. The sin of every author, Paul, is to lose your audience in the first, chapter or 20 pages. This book had to be like that. It had to start like that. And I struggled and worked on it. But it's just how it is. Look, Buddhism, Eastern spirituality is a very hard sale in the Western world. I was in sales for 30 years. I was very good at it, right? It's a hard sell because it teaches us to let go, basically, of all the things we have acquired in our life. Everything we acquire, from our first car to our house to, all of these things, they're chains that bind us, right? They limit us. If we truly want to be free, those seeking freedom, if you're the type of person who would rather be happy in ignorance than, let's say, challenged in a greater understanding of the truth, don't read my book. However, if you're, I think, like a lot of people, there's some truth that we don't yet understand that we're naturally inclined to seek, right? That's part of existential philosophy. That's part of Buddhism. Friedrich Nietzsche said it, this is the world. It's screwed up, right? He wrote a book called Beyond Good and Evil. We try to make everything either good or evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of the yin-yang symbol. It's both of that, right? We have to understand that we all have evil and good in us, right? We all have those. And it's how do we balance that? How do we navigate through that, right? Rather than labeling and saying, I'm all this and none of that. Nobody is like that, right? It's impossible to be like that. We wouldn't have electricity if we didn't have two opposite poles, right? It's kind of just understanding in that ocean and navigating through it. Schopenhauer had a cool image where an image of kind of the mind navigating through this time was an old man in a little rowboat in a really heavy sea with his robe, and he had a calm look in his eyes, right? And we just got to ride that storm, embrace the now and the journey. It's easy to say, but hard to practice. We have to find our daily meditations. We have to think about these things every day to truly make progress. It's too easy in the Western culture to let this go. Oh, I did that. I'm forgetting about it. I'm going to move. I'm going to put that behind me and move on, right? And do it again, right? And then put that behind me and move on. But I'm going to do it again, right?
Well,
it's breaking that mindset of, well, that's just life. Well, that's just life. Used to work for me, but it doesn't work for me. This isn't my life, right? This isn't our home. There's somewhere called nirvana that is a greater presence of thought and direction to be than this, right?
Right. And so, yeah, I think what you're getting to is that if you want to transcend and if you want to take on some of the Buddhist teachings, it's somewhat about understanding them, but it's a lot about practicing them. Because if you're coming from the correct paradigm, your stress levels lower, right? Where in Western religions and Western thought, it's like you said, it's this fake linear line that you're trying to go in this slope, that the slope goes upward. The stock market goes upward. You need more money. You need more possessions. You need better this. You need better that. And the more you climb that slope, the more you're running on the hedonic treadmill that never fulfills you, because as soon as you get the next goal done, then you have another goal. And in some ways, the Buddhism's the same. There's always going to be more challenges. It's the way that you're thinking about the challenges and the way that you're applying the Dharma to your life that is the difference. You were talking right here about in the first 40 pages. What Buddha did was reject all the false and illusory values that the world presses upon us, which lead us to believe we are doing the right things when in fact we are really not. Whereas Nietzsche you said Nietzsche and Buddha took bold action in order to control their own destinies beyond the boundaries of societies. Likewise, they both affixed for themselves freedom and peace of mind beyond the nonsensical madness of the world around them, navigating the universe in directions beyond all seemingly natural and rational norms, values, and virtues. The Buddha found nirvana whereas Nietzsche only was able to identify the world as such and astonishingly finding a willingness through eternal recurrence to come back and do it all over again, as if clinging to some superhuman purpose for fighting and opposing the madness of the world endlessly. Can you kind of explain that paradigm a little bit?
Man, you're hitting some of my very favorite points of this book, Paul.
Oh, okay. Well, I underlined those.
in my quest to find the answer to everything, to existential philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher, is probably my absolute favorite, and I just so locked in on him. I love Sartre too, but he's so complicated and it's so hard to read. Nietzsche had a little bit of a poetic aspect to him. He wrote an aphorism. So, you read a page or two of his thought and then he'd move on to another thought. The eternal recurrence was one of his most famous, there's 8 or 10 things Nietzsche wrote that people, God is dead, this and that. My favorite thing is he called himself the master of ceremonies of our existence, right? He saw through to the core of everything, right? He did this aphorism called the eternal recurrence, right? It's a question designed specifically to scare the hell out of every human being. And it basically says this: hey, if you had the chance to live this exact same life, Paul, that you have lived from the moment you were born to up till the day, over and over and ad infinitum into infinity, you could live this same life over and over again. Would you do it?
Are you asking me that?
Yes.
Maybe. I feel like maybe
most
no.
People say no. Deep
I would say no. I'd like it to be better.
I would not.
Yeah.
His theory, right, was that we should, if we don't love our lives to the fullest and that we would want to do it over, then we haven't found our authentic purpose in life. Authenticity is being who you are, right? I used to be a corporate sales guy and I hated it, man. Climbing this and that. Now I'm a bartender at night, an author who has a jewelry shop with my better half. We go out and we find crystals and agates and we make jewelry and we love doing it. We do it over and over. It's a cool way to exist, right? Far beyond the traps that I used to have myself in, trying to be something I was not because I wanted lots of money, right? I wanted lots of things. But there was no basis behind it, right? His base, in the end, he truly felt that, right? I believe Friedrich Nietzsche truly felt that. He was a smart guy and he knew a lot. And he probably would love to come back as himself and do this all over again. But there was no substance behind it. That's what happened to me when I found Dharma and I heard what the Buddha wrote. The Buddha, I make comparisons to Nietzsche. Nietzsche, if he knew it, would hate it that I compare him to. He hated Eastern spirituality. His mentor was Schopenhauer. He got rid of Schopenhauer because Schopenhauer leaned too much toward Eastern spirituality and thinking in his philosophy. However, the Buddha comes up with Dharma. He says, I have ascended, right? He left. He found his way out. He got rid of everything, released all of his fetters, became free and ascended back into the universal consciousness. That's nirvana, right? But he left behind what he calls a raft. He said, use these words as your sticks and your leaves and all that to put together your raft so you can cross the shores of samsara to nirvana, right? To find that place. There is a purpose, right? It's spiritual. It's not a mansion in the sky where you're going to live with your family happy ever. Nirvana is kind of a hard thing. There's really no specific example of it, but there's amazing stuff about it to where it's almost like our purpose is we have been separated from that is the universal consciousness, right? The greatest feeling in the world, it is said or thought, is to be reunited with that selfless part of the universal consciousness. That's my idea of what nirvana is, right? And our just the thought of us while we're here, we can never get there right now. We can ascend in this lifetime, right? But just the vision of that is the awakening. It's the feeling that my heart does find some freedom somewhere, some purpose, right? Somewhere to ascend, something to expand upon, It's almost as said, going to nirvana is like being born as a new star and starting your own galaxy and being able to create whatever you want, right? This is what the Hindus and the Buddhists believe, right? The part of the collective consciousness, right? Nietzsche said this is just it. He was one of these matter, accident of time, and in the ending, I say, I wonder if they passed each other on the way out. And the Buddha said adios, on Nietzsche's way back in. But, the Buddha left behind the Dharma and just changed millions of lives for greater purposes. Nietzsche died in obscurity. He was hugging a horse in the street. He lost his mind, right? His last book, major book, which was going to be huge, called Will to Power. It's just the diary of a madman, right? It's a lot of thoughts jumbled and it never got finished, right? And I think that the paradox of those two, the way that both of they're both exclamation points in time, but one just has a purpose behind it and one is kind of just random. If you believe life is just random and it's a huge accident, I've never believed that. I've always thought in my heart that there is something greater, some purpose that we have. And Dharma and Buddhism, the Dhammapada, what the Buddha teaches, to me, makes the most sense. And we have to take a lot more responsibility on what we allow into our minds, what we let escape from our minds, our voice, and all that to the world. I see a lot of hypocritical stuff in religion, politics, who say this is the way to live, but you look at them and they're not living that way at all, right? Dharma requires that you actually live this, right? You become that, and finding that, just that vision of that, is a form of peace, freedom, and happiness that allows us to move further. We further develop that in our daily meditations, right? The end of the book is all about the cycle, what I call the 3 breaths of the 7 chakras meditation. Mm-hmm. 3 breaths being the becoming, arrival and departure aspect through each one of the 7 chakras. So we see each little aspect of our lives, both before it happened, now, and how it's going to be when it leaves from me. And we think about all those little things, and it's a filter, right? So it's a pretty complex little thing, but when you get down to it, the nuts and bolts, Dharma is very simple.
Yeah, it reminds me of this quote that I read by the Buddha. I don't know if it was in your book, but I just found it. Meditate, live purely, be quiet, do your work with mastery. Like the moon, come out from behind the clouds, shine. And I love that, because you're talking about how the never-ending hypocrisy in people with power and politics and religion, but all of us, but in the people in power, it's easier to see because they're in the spotlight. And they say, oh, yeah, we got to live like this. This is what my policies are going for. This is what my church says. This is what my teachings say. And then you just hear the worst shadow behaviors that come out in the news, and just the opposite of what they're saying, they're doing. And I think that's the whole point. It's like, with Buddhism, if you're actually doing the work, being quiet, meditating, living justly, living by the Dharma, treating people how you want to be treated, whatever, all these things, you're not seeking the power in this realm. You're not trying to manipulate people to worship you or to give you money. You're kind of making a compromise with your own peace in a way. Like, come out like the moon and shine. Why do you need to go? It's kind of like that whole, everyone's probably in the U.S., most people have been exposed to the Bible, but this is a famous verse that reminds me of this, when it says somewhere in there, like Jesus says, like, don't go praying in the streets with trumpets and horns and exalting yourself, like go into the closet and pray, right? But what do we see people on TV doing? The opposite, right? And it's like literally practicing prayer should be something that is an actual thing you do, not for show. So I'm not sure what my point is, though, just kind of reflecting on what you were saying.
Look, that quote you just gave from the Buddha, we could spend another hour and just break down that quote, and I could show you how that embodies every aspect of Dharma, and what it's a beautiful thing. First of all, and I talk about this in the book a little bit, there's what's called what the Hindus and the Buddhists call the seed of Tathagata Garbha, and I try to stay away from words like Tathagata Garbha in my book. I'm trying to write to a Western audience, right?
Right.
But it's the seed we all have. It's like the seed of Buddha nature, right? Buddha simply means awaken one, right? Buddha, awaken one. The Buddha is not a god. The Buddha does not say, worship me. You won't find anywhere where the Buddha was a jealous god or donut. Buddha simply means awaken. We all have the potential to be Buddha. There's thousands of Buddhas, right? We have that potential of awakening. come out from the clouds. The clouds are samsara, right? These are the clouds around us. I had an amazing vision of one night when a star actually came out from behind a cloud. And I think I had just read that quote that you said, and I fully understood what that meant, right? That moon, shine like the moon, that's that light within us that we all have that we're unaware that we have, right? And letting that out. Buddhism and Hindu spirituality, Eastern spirituality is a lot about just letting things be, being quiet. That's peace, right? Peace is quiet, calmfulness, meditative, chaos, and distortion, right? It's all of everything around us, right? Our lights aren't able to shine. What does it say? Matthew 5:17, let your light shine be others so your Father may be glorified in heaven, right?
Right.
All religions have little pieces, but it's been so cluttered with all this other junk over time. It's the same message wherever you go, but it just gets lost, right? We all have this light within us, and we don't utilize it, right? Because the world impresses these templates and impressions upon us from very early ages of who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be like. There's a famous quote from, I believe it's either Manjushri or Tsongkhapa that says, it's about our parents, right? It says, love us till the end of the earth that they do. They will do anything. They will die for us. They will do this. But if they aren't teaching us Dharma, then we're being taught the wrong thing. They don't know it. None of us know it, right? So we can't even trust our parents in a lot of circumstances. I look back to the 80s when I grew up, and you kind of fall into whatever your parents' political party was, that's what you become. Whatever your parents' religion was, that's what you become. Whether they were productive or lazy, that you have a tendency to do this, right? In the end, we're born alone and we die alone. That's a very melancholic thing, but it's also, this is why I like existential philosophy, because I like to know the truth, right? It's hard sometimes, right? But it's important to understand. The Buddha said, another thing about samsara in this world we're in, we always want to help others, right? I want to go and help these others while we're wounded ourselves, right? The Buddha has a cool parable called the arrow of the heart. Man has an arrow in his heart. Doctor tells him, we don't take this up right now, you're going to die. Wait a minute, who shot me? Are you qualified to take this out of who's going to give me the blood? Doesn't matter. If we don't take this arrow out of your heart, you're going to die. But what's the implication? This is us, right? Instead of addressing the arrow, what I say we all have in our hearts, we try to go out and fix the world, but yet we're not fixed yet, right? Dharma, Buddhism, what the Buddha taught is about pulling that arrow out of our heart, right? Fixing ourselves, finding our peace. The goal of this life, I believe, Paul, is it sounds selfish. A lot of people call the Buddha selfish for leaving nirvana and leaving all of us here. But the goal of our life is to free ourselves from this metaphoric prison that we're in. The prison is samsara. We don't see it. We're the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're the best, but we're, when you look at it, are we really free? Are we bound to these timelines and this job and this duty and this, I have a line, patriotism. I love the country. I love everybody who fought for it, but, it's almost this feeling of, if you got this thing, I die for my country. I do it. And I'd come back again and I'd do it all over again because I love this country. Right. And is that the purpose, or do we need to free ourselves kind of from this matrix that we're in, that we all seem to think we have to come together and make it and fix it? The irony, kind of the joke of it all. I don't want to say the joke, but the riddle of the sphinx of it all is we're in this unfixable situation and we spend our lives trying to fix it. I have a line in the book. It's ironic that we're all worried about going to hell, right? All of us Christians or whatever, we've got this thing. We're worried about going to hell. We're already here, man. The good thing about samsara, there's a little hole at the top of that wheel. The Buddha's standing on top and he's pointing to this little sign that has 4 lines on it. The 4 noble truths of life. We all suffering. Suffering passes. Suffering too shall pass. Mindfulness that suffering too shall pass. It's that 4th noble truth. Our understanding that all things pass, even the suffering, that we have the ability to let that go, right? It's a very metaphysical thing, and it sounds very basic and simple, but it takes on many forms when we apply it to each aspect of our lives through all 7 chakras. It's a science of spirit, man. It really is.
Yeah, you talk about science in here, which we don't have time to chat about today, but people can read the book. But I liked when the book starts getting more happy is basically in part 3, when you're talking about if freedom is enlightenment, enlightenment then is the freedom from all clutter in our minds. Once this gateway to freedom from all previous clutter is found, we can begin to seek new forms of enlightenment, which can refill our minds with peaceful, purposeful, and mindful visions for our future. Freedom and enlightenment are the foundations for peace within. And I don't mean it's about happiness. I just mean like for your reader who's a little bit worried, but about what it says. But to know the truth, you have to know the dark side and the light side. You can't just know one side. And a big issue I have with a lot of Western psychology is it's all about the light side. And in Western religion, it's all about the light side, but the dark side is other people, and it's a threat, right? It's not integrated. The Tao, the symbol of the yin yang you talk about in here, we all have that within us, right? And so I think this isn't. It's simple, but it's not simple. It's simple to understand. It's hard to apply and live it, because that means you actually have to challenge every single thing about your existence, how you were raised, what you were taught, what you believe, what you value, your relationship with money, how you treat other people. Like you even said, like patriotism and loving your country, like, yeah, but like also to what end, right? And understanding that life is suffering. When Buddha awoke under that tree in the first parable, just seeing that, it allowed him to just live a different life. And that's threatening to people, because when you're happy and feeling good and just accepting what is, people are like, what? They like want to be around you, but they're simultaneously like, oh, what's wrong with you? You don't want to fix this problem. Well, I do want to fix the problem, but I'm not caught up in the drama of this. My body is okay about the fact that there's a pothole in the street. We're all upset about it, right? Everyone's freaking out. And some people are stepping in it, but I'm going, yeah, well, of course it's there. But yeah, I'll call the city, but I'm not going to stay up all night worrying about my car going into it, right? That's the difference between Buddhism and the Western thought. I feel like it's like,
yes,
thoughts.
That's amazing, and it is right, and it's our mind, right? Our mind is everything. Okay. And this is another thing that comes out of Dharma. And almost like, when you think about it, I can touch this coffee cup, right? And I can see this coffee cup. The touch, the vision of it, everything, it's only an electrically charged sense within this meat sack that our soul or our spirit or our consciousness or whatever we want to call it, or ego, and it's like a dream, right? There's a spot where science stops, where science can't tell you that point where that electrical charge, I say this in Totero a lot, for wands the fire, which is electricity, right? We can contain it in a little rubber case and make it move from here to there, but it never really ends, right? It doesn't start and end. It's just something that's always there, and that's unexplainable. The point where that sense, when I touch this cup, where it tells my mind, this is a cup, this is a silver cup with a purple top, and it holds coffee and all that stuff. The point where that leaves, where that cognition comes in, and the point and purpose of all that is still unexplainable to science. We may never know it, right? Socrates said when we come here, and the beginning of the book's about a baby being born, right? From the comfort of the collective consciousness to it driving away, and then boom, I'm born and I got steel instruments and all this stuff. And Socrates said, before we come back, Socrates and all of the great Greek philosophers believed in reincarnation. Before we come back, we have to drink from the river of forgetfulness, right? There's a reason, there's a mystery, and the reason for that is if we knew what this world was, then maybe there would be no purpose to it, right? In my next book, I go back and talk about the god Brahma, which the creation story is that, I don't know if God maybe got a little bored, but he created this illusory world and he got caught up in it, right? And that's us. We're caught up and we want to get out and we've got to get back. It's very deep. It's very spiritual. It's very philosophical. But, that whole letting go thing, it is a very tough sell. But I try to tell people sometimes, if think about it, Paul. If I'm 45 years old, at 35 or 55 or 65 or whatever, and I still have this feeling inside me that I'm not happy, right? Then you got to look back at everything you've done to get here and say, should I just keep doing this then, right? I mean, it seems like common sense, but something inside of us, the river of forgetfulness, whatever it is that's in us, makes us keep doing this laborious thing. I look at that eternal recurrence question. I think I've been around thousands of lifetimes, Paul. I don't want to come back. I'm done. I would not want to do this again. Everything in life, the older you get, it's just a struggle, man. There's little patches of beauty and happiness here and there, but it falls apart, and then we find that we go on this journey to find a new one. But in the end, it's a struggle. The Buddhists say that the end of life, we fear death and we mourn death and all this. We should celebrate it. It's like one lifetime is like one day of work. What's everybody's favorite part of work? It's quitting time, right? 5 o'clock. Let's go have a beer. Let's go do this. It's a time to celebrate, right? Hopefully we've done something in life that has helped us to evolve. There's evolution and devolution, right? And karma. We're either improving our karma in our space in our next incarnation, or we've done something to set ourselves back. That's a powerful thing when you think about it. And I talk about it a lot in the book. I'm going to talk about it a lot in my next book, but it's very different than what we're used to grasping and comprehending here in the West. Like Alan Watts back in the 60s, people compare me to his work. I want to be a Western voice for Eastern spirituality, because I really think it's something that we don't even hardly consider here at all. And it could be the answer to every question that we've asked. And it could be the reason why we look at TV today, or whether we watch or we wonder, how did this guy get in charge? Why is this so screwed up? Why can't my kids learn in school? Why do people want to teach this to my kids when they should be learning this? Why is there always a war? Another line you didn't read in there. War has always been around in samsara. War is here today in samsara. There's never been a time when there wasn't a war. There's war now, and there will never be a time in the future when there is not war. That's because samsara is a warring existence, right? It's not our job to save the world. It's not our job to save everybody else. What it is our job to do is create our Dharma bubble and clear ourselves, right? Get ourselves straight, get ourselves clear, get ourselves going in a direction that makes us happy every day. The point of Nietzsche's thing, eternal recurrence, if you're not happy what you're doing every day, then you're doing something wrong, right? It's a blunt way to say it. Meditation, yoga, understanding Dharma is a way to kind of understand our lives and direct it more towards a happy existence than one that's filled with anxiety, fear, doubt, where we either take meds or we just script, or we just say, well, that's just life. I'm just going to keep doing this thing that I hate doing until the end of time because everybody else is depending on me and all of that. In the end, most of that isn't true. I used to fear losing my job or not getting this or, but I've never been destitute, right? I get up and I do my job and all that. If I get fired, there's another job I can go get, right? If I don't like this job, I can go do this. If I don't living here, I can go do this. That's Jean-Paul Sartre, facticity and transcendence, right? If I don't like this, then I can go here. If I stay here, it's my own fault. If I was abused as a child and I take that abuse and I use that for the rest of my life to carry with me, that's a mistake, right? Or the state of our existence might not necessarily be our fault, but in karmic relations it is. But let's say it's not our fault, but it is our problem, right? If we don't deal with the problem, we're never going to get anywhere. We're going to stay here. Friedrich Nietzsche used to say, bringing your mistakes along with you into the now and into the future is a huge mistake in itself, right?
Joe, this has been a wonderful conversation so far, and we've only had 45 minutes because both of my schedule and your schedule not lining up completely, and I've got a hard stop. So I really appreciate this. I really think this is going to be great for a lot of listeners who are like, they know a lot about psychology and spirituality, but they don't know how to apply it. And so I think this book here, Mara Dawn, Buddha Rise, The Awakening by Joe Singleton is a good starter for people that are wanting to get into the application of Buddhism. I have to sign off, but let's make a deal. Book 2, give me a call. Let's do round 2. Are you up for it?
You got it. And hey, man, just a really quick summation. That's the reason I wrote that book as an introductory. At the beginning of a book, I call sources of inspiration, books that I was reading and that came up as I was writing this book. If you get the book, it's available, Amazon.com worldwide, Maradon, Buddha, Rise the Awakening. All of that's in there. If you see something that piques your interest, like Friedrich Nietzsche or this Buddhist thinker or this whatever, you can see where that came from and go research it for yourself. I do my version of the meditation at the end. I encourage everybody, meditation is different for everybody. Take this as an idea and develop it for your own self, what works for you. But yeah, we could talk for hours and I would love to, but man, it's a fast-paced world, isn't it? Technology tells us we've got to move on.
True. Next time we will, though. Next time I'll reserve more time. But thank you, Joe. Appreciate all your time, and I'm looking forward to this one coming out.
You got it, brother. I'm glad we were able to hook up today, and have a great one.
You too. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it. This has been another episode of the Intentional Clinician podcast. If you are enjoying the show, please leave us a rating on iTunes or share the show with people you know. I would surely appreciate it. As some of you know, I am passionate about preventing future violence in the United States. I have started a nonprofit with colleagues called the National Violence Prevention Hotline, which is a 501c3 organization. We are endeavoring to gain funding and collaborators and volunteers so that we can start a 24/7 hotline and chat line to reach potential perpetrators before they may act violently. It is a bold effort to curb violence and save innocent lives by working to connect with potential offenders while they are in the planning stages of violence, help to de-escalate them, and provide resources so that they can get appropriate professional help. The National Violence Prevention Hotline is looking to open up a conversation about violence in society, the causes, and the solutions. You can learn more by visiting our website at violencepreventionhotline.org. You can get involved by writing your congressperson from our website, sharing it with your network, or even donating to the cause. If you are looking for an EMDR, International Association consultant, I am a consultant and I can help provide 20 hours that you need to become EMDRIA certified. Just check out the show notes and send me a message and see if we're a good fit to work together. If you are in need of counseling, do not hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. You can also make an appointment with the excellent clinicians at Health for Life Counseling in Grand Rapids as part of the Trauma Informed Counseling Center of Grand Rapids by visiting www.healthforlifegr.com. And if you are in the state of Michigan, you can also schedule a telehealth appointment. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss and his guest, and while these are based upon the literature they have read and the experience in their respective fields, the information on this podcast should not be viewed or thought of as the definitive opinion on any subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you're in a crisis, please call 911 or the National Crisis Line at 988. Support your local bookstore by shopping at bookshop.org. That's www.bookshop.org. It donates a percentage of sales to local bookstores all across the United States, which I think gives character to our cities and a place to hang out and a place to explore. You can order from the comfort of your own home online while supporting businesses near you. If you are a therapist and you are not involved in your local counseling or therapist or social work organization, please get involved to at least pay dues so that we can have lobbyists help keep mental health care accessible at the government level, and also expanding into schools and other places that need it. And also, if you didn't know, counseling organizations and professional organizations are working to keep us from becoming gig workers for a lot of large corporations who are coming in and trying to buy up local counseling agencies or basically pay you what they pay for people to deliver food to your house. So, get involved. Until next time on The Intentional Clinician, I wish you all a safe and peaceful week.
There will come a day when you must choose to trust the other side of your mind, like a window to an attic. The stars through the windshield cobblestone streets. All directions and ways to meet. A compass and a needle. They only get you to a point. I walk the high road, feels like a low road. I'm on the low road, say it's the high road.